Wrestling Maniac's already on. What up, buddy?
Hey, what's up, wrestling?
Got a little bit of a different format for you guys today. Got False Behind the Boards, Certified T, Responsible Rob, for your Fresh Pulls Fresh Sports Hour. Happy Monday, guys. How was your weekend?
You know, it was pretty good. I relaxed. I got to see a Celtics loss. Yeah, life is good.
Life is great for you, T. I'm glad. I'm glad. Rob, how'd you do this weekend?
It was good. I actually got to see my family this weekend. It was my brother's birthday. Happy birthday to him, 23.
Wow.
And I also got to celebrate two of my friends getting married.
Nice.
And I haven't seen them in well over 3 or 4 years at least. So it was nice to be together and celebrating with them and their families.
Nice, man. It's beautiful. I got to spend some time with the family and watch some playoff basketball.
Oh, yeah.
That was
Always
fun.
a good thing.
Yeah.
Let's go first day.
Yeah. What are your thoughts there on the this first round?
So, yeah, I mean, obviously, the first round ended since our last show. And really, honestly, my takeaway was, I was a little disappointed with some of the teams down the stretch. Specifically, if anybody remembers, I predicted that the Jazz were going to sort of fold and implode. I just don't think they like each other. But I thought there would be enough that they would maybe push it to 7 games. And obviously we didn't see any series go 7 games. So that was a little disappointing. My biggest disappointment was honestly the Wolves. Although I don't like that team, they have a ton of star power. And to give away 3 fourth-quarter leads in that series was alarming, and specifically the last 2 games. It was a little scary to see how quickly they imploded. Even, for that closeout game, they were up 9. And I was like, this is going to go downhill quick. And within a minute and a half, 2 minutes, it was tied up. And just anybody watching knew that the game was over. So just watching them implode. And then my other big disappointment was the Pelicans. I did predict that they were going to beat the Suns in really one of the biggest upsets we've seen in a long time, probably since that We Believe Warriors team, who I believe took down the number 1 seed Jazz, with led by Baron Davis. But Devin Booker came back. Devin Booker righted the ship, and the combination of McCollum and Ingram just didn't get it done. So I was a little shocked at how some of those teams folded down the stretch. It looked like we were headed towards a few 7-game series, and was a little surprised that it didn't happen.
Yeah, to me, the way the games played out were surprising, but I think the way the series resulted weren't. If you look at the second-round matchups, Suns, Mavs, Warriors, Grizzlies, Heat, Sixers, Bucks, Celtics. I think the only one there that you can genuinely say is maybe a little bit of a surprise is the Celtics. We thought the Heat were going to put up a better fight, and they didn't. I mean, sorry, not the Heat, the Nets. Getting swept out of the first round. I think that's really the only surprise. But if you look at all those other matchups, those are the teams we kind of expected to be there.
Yeah.
So I completely agree that some of the individual games in the first round were disappointing and maybe not as exciting as we had hoped for out of the NBA playoffs so far. But I think we still have some great matchups. And I'm glad that you mentioned the Timberwolves because I absolutely love the way the Memphis Grizzlies are playing right now. And yes, the Wolves imploded on themselves. And you could say that maybe they threw away the series. But I would say it's equal parts. They threw away the series that the Grizzlies won it. Ja Morant is here. I'm so happy that everybody is getting to see him for the player he is. Because I know a lot of people who just watch highlights and they don't really watch the games during the season because of blackout restrictions or regional availability, whatever it is. They don't get to watch him play during the regular season. And they're getting to watch him now, and it is a treat. It is a gift being presented to us that they made it to the next round, and we get to watch him play more.
I agree.
And I can't wait to see what he does against this Golden State Warriors team, because I said it last week, and I'll say it again. I got the Grizzlies as my underdog to win it all.
Yeah, I think what we have a similar view on the first round, right? Is the outcomes were not a ton of a surprise, but some of the surprise was some of the stuff that happened in the games. But I think honestly, it was a great great first round. I think the only thing that we could have hoped for a little more was, like you said, the Nets series to go a little longer, and then we expected a little more fight from the Hawks. And losing 4-1 and Trae Young just not showing up at all. As we know from episode 1, I am a Trae Young hater, so I enjoyed it, but I just expected that team to do more and to fight more. I mean, that Heat team, they sat Kyle Lowry for a game due to injury. In the closeout game, sat Jimmy Butler. And if you're the Hawks, you're supposed to put up more of a fight than that.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, but that just proves that Bam Adebayo is here as well.
He's that dude.
I love that, man.
Yeah. I agree too. Which series is a must watch for you? And like what storyline are you going to follow?
For me, it's got to be the Heat Sixers matchup in this second round. Everything is riding on how the Sixers play without Joel Embiid. We don't know when he's coming back. That orbital fracture, it could take weeks to heal.
Yeah.
There's no guarantee that he comes back at all during these playoffs. So now you're looking at James Harden. You're looking at Tyrese Maxey. And both of those guys have been playing well, but they've, I think, been playing well because of Joel Embiid and because they have that big man presence down in the paint. You take that away, it completely changes the game plan. And I am really, really curious to see how Doc Rivers coaches this team through that. I'm not confident that they're going to be able to.
Yeah, agreed. And I think as far as that series goes, I think the big question, like you said, Tyrese Maxey and James Harden, is like we're going to have questions answered about James Harden. Is he too old? Did he age really quickly? Is the hamstring from last year still a problem? Or can he revert back to the Houston Rockets James Harden, who had the ball in every possession? And they basically went five out, and he tried to break down the defense and either find an open man for a three or get to the rim or get to the line. So that's a good one. For me, it's the Mavs, though. Obviously, I predicted them to win, and I predicted that they would be able to do it with Luka missing a few games. I didn't know necessarily how Luka was going to look coming back, but I had confidence because his game isn't necessarily predicated on explosiveness. He's more shifty and quirky with the way he moves. And he came back and he didn't miss any steps. So for me, they're going up against the number 1 seed, obviously, and I don't think there's any pressure on them. But Luka's battle-tested. This is his first time out of the first round, and it's very rare that you can look at a player who's never gotten out of the first round and say they're battle-tested. But if we remember, he was giving those Clippers boys medicine. He was giving them their dosage every day in the playoffs for 2 years. You look at Paul George, an elite defender, Kawhi Leonard, an elite defender, Pat Beverly, an elite defender, and none of them could slow down Luka. So now, in this first series, you had Luka going up against a quality defensive team, and he just did his thing. He's working to get switches to get a favorable matchup that he likes, and then he's just breaking you down. And, show me somebody on the Suns. If you think that Bridges is going to slow him down, I disagree. I don't think the man can be slowed down or stopped. The question here is firepower. I think when you look at who has the best player on the floor during that Suns Mavs matchup, it's going to be Luka. But then maybe the 4 next best players are going to be on the Suns. So the Suns have 4 of the 5 best players in the series. So can Luka still do enough to kind of thwart all of that? And I think he's going to have to average a triple-double to do it. So in game 1, I would look and say, okay, did Luka end up with somewhere around 30, 10, and 10? He's going to have to put up massive numbers, sort of like what Giannis is going to have to do if he hopes to beat the Celtics. So that is my series to watch, and I'm really hoping that Luka shows out, and this is the first step to him becoming Luka legend.
Yeah,
I'm going to agree with you there that is a series to watch, but for me, it's got to be Bucks Celtics.
I agree.
I know I was just talking about how the Heat and the Sixers are going to play, but man, am I excited for that Milwaukee-Boston matchup. I mean,
they gotta tie it up this next game. No, they don't tie it up. It's going to be tough, but I see it going 7.
Yeah, I think it could easily go 7. Yeah. And to be clear,
it should.
And to be clear, you can't go wrong with any of these matchups in the second round.
No, they're all great.
Obviously, we're isolating a couple here for people to really hone in on,
Mm-hmm.
but watch as many of these games as you possibly can. Boy, we are getting spoiled. You look at every single matchup, and there are superstars in there.
Yeah.
You
and
got-
storylines.
It's definitely a great year for NBA playoffs for sure.
It's kind of like how the NFL playoffs went this past year. Just every single game past the divisional round was a treat.
Yeah.
An absolute treat to watch. So take in as much of it as possible. For T, it's the Suns Mavs. For me, it's the Bucks Celtics. False, what do you got?
I'd have to go with Bucks
agree
Celtics.
it's Bucks Celtics?
Yeah. I think I think Jalen has a possible hamstring issue.
Yeah.
But I think they'll work that out. I think both Jason and Jalen have to play a little bit better, and then once they tie it up, then it'll be a little easier. But I had some notes here. I just thought that I think the Bucks are just too long here. I think Giannis and Lopez ate up the paint a little bit, forcing too many bad shots, in my opinion. So I think it's going to be fun. What we get here, Eric on YouTube says Bucks in 6.
Well, here's the thing: like Bucks in 6 is possible, but sort of like what I mentioned in the Lucas series is something that we're going to have to see in every series. So in that 76er series, like we are going to have to see Harden put up massive numbers in order for them to succeed,
or for him and Maxey to both put up substantial numbers. Not massive, but if Harden and Maxey can both put up 25, 8, and 8,
I don't even think
that gives them a fighting chance.
Yeah, I don't even think that's enough. I think Maxey's got to give you 30 points a night. I think Harden has got to give you 25 and 15. Like he has to turn into Houston Harden for them to, because Miami's just such a solid team. And then you look at what Ja's going to have to do to get past that Warriors team, because it's not just Steph and Clay. And obviously, you have Draymond in there, but Jordan Poole, like you have so many players that you have to get past. And it's going to be the same thing for Giannis. Like Giannis is the best player on the court, and then the next best player is a Celtic, and then the next best player after that is a Celtic. Yeah. And then there's debate about, Marcus Smart versus, Drew Holiday, that type of thing. So, like, you're going to have to see, who is really going to step it up. And, I think I just saw, Bobby Portis's name on the screen. But sort of what you mentioned about that length, it's those guys inside that are going to have to, really contest shots and force the Celtics to do what they did in Game 1, which is shoot 53s.
He said that Portis gave him problems on the interior.
Yeah, and like their length is so much, and the ability for Portis to hit open threes, like that's what is going to cause Giannis to end up with 12, 13, 14 assists, is that like you can't stop them going to the rack, and they have length inside, but all of their length can go out and shoot the 3-ball, which is it's going to be tough, really tough for them to get by. So all of these series are absolutely phenomenal to watch. Like you said, we've been spoiled this year, similar to what we saw in the NFL.
Yeah. And hey, what up, Airport Man, Flying High Frenchie? Thank you guys for tuning in. Eric, thanks for tuning in. Eric says Danny Green, got to give them 10 to 15. Harris has to score 20 plus a night, and for them to have a chance for these two games.
Yeah. And I think that's why you said it's going to be such an interesting series, is because like all of those, like when we talk about Danny Green, when you talk about Tobias Harris, like and them earning their money, specifically Tobias Harris, like that's going to come from pick and roll with James Harden.
Right.
So like if James Harden to me doesn't end up with 13, 14, 15 assists per game, then those guys like Tobias Harris isn't going to be taking you off the dribble in ISO and scoring, because that's not what's best for the Sixers to win the series. Like he can do that, but it's not going to give you your best chance to win. Same thing with Danny Green. You never want him to go ISO. So like you're going to want him to catch and shoot those open threes, and that's going to come from Harden's hands. So I think like you're going to have to see throwback Harden, and like this is crazy. We could talk about each of these series and go deep dive in every single one of them, and we might end up doing that, just choosing a series a day at some point and putting some information out, because this is just an absolutely amazing round.
Right, and remember, we're going to do this show tomorrow too. As a reminder, guys, on TikTok and YouTube, we're going to do the full show tomorrow. We just wanted to give you guys a little bit of our feedback on what happened in the playoffs, and then
just a little taste.
Just a little taste.
Yep.
We'll get into that tomorrow. Hopefully, Bert's feeling better, and he'll come in.
Yeah.
And we'll give you a little more on that.
I got faith that he'll show up like flu game Jordan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Flying High Frenchie says, would love to see Luka versus Ja.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
That would be amazing.
Oh,
Unfortunately, I don't think you're going to see it. But
Yeah.
you could. You could.
Yeah.
You
But
could.
I mean, it is, anything's possible,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
So, but, do you want to skip over to the next topic?
Yeah, so
Football?
We're gonna go football, but I know that that Rob wanted to give somebody their flowers.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll step into that, and then we'll jump into some football real quick.
I do. I talked about it last week on the podcast that in baseball, and this is the only thing I'm going to say about baseball for today.
Are we going to have some baseball talk tomorrow?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
All right, cool.
Yeah,
We can
we're
turn
going to do a
into
little
that.
bit of baseball tomorrow, but
Sweet.
the only thing I want to say today, last week on the podcast, I said that this is the year of the veteran, and it is continuing to prove accurate because congratulations to Clayton Kershaw, set the Dodgers franchise record for career strikeouts.
Hey.
So congratulations to him on a wonderful career milestone. He's put together quite an impressive resume, and he's passed some incredible names along the way. Don Drysdale, Sandy Koufax.
Ooh, yep.
So really just wanted to take a second to note that.
Love it. Love it.
Thanks, Rob. On the football block, we had 4 players that were on trade on, this draft
Yeah, we had them on Trade Watch.
that
and-
didn't get traded.
yeah.
Did you want to speak on that a little bit?
Yeah, you want to jump in? So basically, the 4 players, we had 5 players, but obviously A.J. Brown went to my Philadelphia Eagles, baby. But then we had 4 other players that we thought were on Trade Watch. That was Jimmy G, Baker Mayfield, Debo Samuel, and DK Metcalf. So if you want to start, first, do you think that they're going to get traded? And if they do, what's the right place for them? If you want to start with the quarterbacks.
I think realistically, there's a good chance that all 4 of these guys get traded even before OTAs. Most likely, in my opinion, being Jimmy G. Because we know that the Niners are going with Trey Lance. We know he's the guy.
Yeah.
They've come out and said it without actually saying it in black and white. It was very evident that the NFC Championship game was Jimmy G's last game as a Niner. For me, I would love to see him go to Detroit.
Cool.
I think they need a quarterback. Jared Goff is not the answer. They've got some young talent on that team. Amon-Ra St. Brown threw everybody off guard last year. No one expected him to play the way he did down the stretch. And we know TJ Hawkinson can catch tons of passes at the tight end position, and he shouldn't be catching them from Jared Goff. He should be catching them from a quarterback who knows how to throw the football. And I think bringing in Jimmy G gives them even more options with what they can do with DeAndre Swift. There are more offensive options on that team than I think people realize, and adding Jimmy G to the mix really opens it up. So that, for me, there's no other option, really, than to send him to Detroit.
Yeah, so, I have another option, and it's weird because we think this team has it put together, but bear with me. Mine's the Dolphins. So, obviously, Tua is probably under more stress and on the hot seat more than any quarterback in the league this upcoming year. He got an additional weapon, in Tyreek Hill, and they brought in some running backs, Chase Edmonds, stuff like that, brought in some offensive line help. But I haven't been a believer in Tua from the start, and I'm not a believer in Tua now. And so I think it's only a matter of time until Tua gets benched. And they brought in Teddy Bridgewater, which I actually think was a nice move because he is the ultimate right the ship, conservative quarterback who will make the right plays. The issue is this team isn't built for just making the right plays, right? You have speed demons out there at wide receiver. You have an offense that outside of the quarterback is ready to win right now. And that's why I think Jimmy G to the Dolphins would make sense. Like Tyreek Hill, I don't think would be excited about playing with Teddy Bridgewater. I don't think anybody's going to be excited about playing with Tua outside of the first 2 or 3 weeks. When things go downhill, I think they're going to go downhill quick. And I just think that his ability to deliver the long ball, his experience in the league, and his ability to move and keep a play alive. I mean, you're not getting Pat Mahomes in Jimmy G. But you're getting a guy who has some wheels, who can keep the play alive, and you have the ultimate scramble drill wide receiver in Tyreek Hill. And so I just think it would be a perfect fit. So that would be where I think he's going.
Now, personally, I would love to see him go to my Giants. I think he would be a perfect fit for the organization and for the culture and the way the offense is going. However, I know they've said they like Daniel Jones. They signed Tyrod Taylor to a 2-year deal. So I'm not getting my hopes up. But in a perfect world, he'd go to New York, he'd be a football giant, and he'd throw a ton of passes to Kadarius Toney, he'd throw a ton of passes to Sterling Shepard, they'd use Saquon Barkley out of the backfield, and everything would be great, and the Giants would be a 12-win team. But it's not a perfect world. So we're going to move on to Baker Mayfield. And for me, I'm going to go a little out on a limb here. You just talked about a team that already has 2 quarterbacks. The Dolphins have Tua, and they brought in Teddy Bridgewater. I'm going to go on a similar route. I think Baker's a good fit for New Orleans. They re-signed, they signed Jameis Winston. They re-signed Taysom Hill. They still have Ian Book as the quarterback they drafted last year, so they have a lot of quarterback options. But with all of the questions surrounding Michael Thomas and how he's going to be after the injury, I think that you need a guy who can come in and say, this is how I'm going to lead this team. And I don't know if Book, Winston, or Hill are those guys. And I think given that Baker has a history of injury, and we know this, it's been well documented and well discussed among everybody, having those options makes it easier because you can manage his gameplay. If it's late in the fourth quarter and he says, hey, I just need to sit out for a couple of plays, throw Jameis in there. Throw Taysom Hill in a Wildcat. Having those extra options gives you a lot more flexibility with what you can do with Baker Mayfield as a quarterback who may not be able to play every snap in every game.
So I don't hate that, and we are just like 2 years removed from thinking that Jameis Winston was never going to start in this league again. So it makes sense. More importantly for me, I'm big on fit, specifically with a quarterback, like how they fit with a coach. And I think that's obviously like a phenomenal fit there. But along those same lines, like I'm going to echo the same sentiments I've been screaming it from the rooftops for a few weeks. Has been the Seahawks. I think he's just a perfect fit there. Baker's used to having weapons. He had Jarvis Landry and OBJ. He goes to the Seahawks and he gets Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. So he has weapons there. It's an offense that's built for a shorter quarterback. They like to move the pocket, and I think he's a great fit with Pete Carroll. So I think that's an easy fit. My sleeper fit for him is going to be the Panthers. They have like $32 million in cap, and I think you can take a chance on Baker. And here's the thing. With that type of cap, you can just really bank on the fact that Baker isn't going to demand $30 million in free agency next year. And I think if he plays okay and he may, get fringe starter money, then you have the ability to go out there and trade some of your future assets, make large dollar signings for wide receivers, and you could surround him with that talent that you need and get yourself out of the basement pretty quick.
Now, in talking about trades for the Panthers, do they trade away Robbie Anderson because he so staunchly came out against signing Baker Mayfield or trading for Baker Mayfield?
No, and the reason why is because like receivers are going to be receivers and they're going to be divas. If he had crossed a line or said anything that was too egregious, then I would say yes. But he just said no with 7 O's. So like for me, that isn't enough for me to say like no. There's no way they can fit together. And like he's played with some divas and some people with some questionable decision making. So I think they would figure out a way to make it work.
All right. Well, Now that we've talked about 2 quarterbacks, let's talk about a couple of wide receivers. You mentioned them earlier. Let's start with Debo Samuel. We've talked about him extensively over the last couple of weeks, especially after he came out and said that he wanted to trade away from the 49ers. We've already talked about Jimmy G and the fact that he's likely to get traded. What are your thoughts on Debo?
Yeah, I think it's easy. I think it's a perfect fit with the Ravens. I thought that prior to the trade, right? But now they trade away Hollywood Brown, and they have no number one. So, that makes sense there with, with Lamar in a run-heavy offense. They brought in extra tight ends. So, the things that they're going to be able to do and just be multiple with their offense would make them even more difficult to defend. And then, second, I think the Titans are a good pick. They have nothing left. They brought in Robert Woods coming off the injury, and they just really, really need some help. And if I'm the Titans and I just brought in Malik Willis, do I want Malik Willis with no weapons, or do I want Malik Willis in with a guy who he can run some college scheme stuff with, right? If you're Malik Willis, you can bring Debo in motion. You can bring him into the backfield. You can run some read option with him. You can do some RPO, things like that. And I just think that it would help with his transition into becoming a starter with a guy like Debo. I actually don't think that there's a wide receiver in the league that's more tailor-made to help a young quarterback, get acclimated with the league.
I agree. I think that's a good point. However, I'm going to double back on my Saints pick. I think they're a good fit for Baker. I think they're a good fit for Debo. And it's almost for the same reasons. We don't know what Michael Thomas is going to look like. Debo Samuel can come into that team and immediately be a number 1 wide receiver and take on that role. And then if you bring in Baker, you've got a quarterback who knows how to throw the football and likes to make big plays down the field. We know that's Debo's game, is the explosive play, that 30, 40-yard downfield catch that's going to kickstart a drive or kickstart an entire team for the rest of the game. But not only that, I talked about the quarterback options. Ian Book, Jameis Winston, Taysom Hill, Baker Mayfield. You have so many different options at quarterback, and Debo Samuel fits those different options at wide receiver.
Yeah.
He can play the long ball with Baker. He can play the slants with a guy like Jameis or Ian Book. He can play a wildcat-type formation with Taysom Hill. He's so versatile. So for a team that has so many quarterback options and versatility in quarterback, especially if they bring in Baker, you need a guy who can make plays in all of those types of settings. And I think Debo Samuel's the only guy in the NFL that can do that. And the same way you talked about him being a really good wide receiver for a young quarterback like Malik Willis, I think he can do the same for a young quarterback like Ian Book. Mm-hmm. We saw a little bit of him last year, not a lot, but enough to see that there is some talent there. And I think if they were to go out and get Debo and Baker and bring them into that offensive style and start working Ian Book in, I think they can absolutely develop him into an NFL level quarterback. So for me, the Saints have 2 primary objectives right now. It's go out and get Baker Mayfield to play quarterback and go out and get Debo Samuel to play wide receiver.
Yeah, and it's funny because when you project Debo to the Saints, he actually fits better with every other quarterback than Jameis Winston. Like you said, him and Taysom Hill, that seems like magic, right?
Yeah.
Him and Baker would seem like magic. And he'd be good with Jameis, but I actually think that he would unlock some things in that offense with those other guys that would be even more important. So next we'll go into DK Metcalf. And I've gone back and forth with DK because I think there's no place that DK can't fit. But I'm going to go ahead with the theme that we talked about last week, which is my belief that you can never have too many talented wide receivers. And I'm going to go with the Chargers. as my pick, and I get that they have Mike Williams and they have Keenan Allen, but they can figure out a way to get DK there, even if it's just for a rental. Look, the AFC is rough, and you have a lot of great young quarterbacks, and almost so much that, like, if the card industry and if, like, we weren't keeping Herbert's name alive, like, he could end up disappearing in the mix because there are so many dominant quarterbacks that are young in the AFC. And I think the way you put it over the top is taking, like, a similar approach to what the Rams took with bringing in OBJ when they already had, obviously, Robert Woods, who went down, like, with an injury the weekend they got there, and Cooper Kupp. Like, you stack your wide receivers, and you give the young kid an opportunity. They have running backs who can catch the ball out of the backfield. And, like, there's just nothing that they can't do on offense right now. It's just that they're going to have to match firepower with some of the best young quarterbacks in the league. And so I think that's personally the best fit for him.
See, I have a similar thought process about matching firepower, but with older quarterbacks. And I'm going to mention a team that we haven't talked about yet and haven't talked about in a couple weeks. For me, DK Metcalf has got to go to the Indianapolis Colts. It has to happen. They just got Matt Ryan. And if you look at the division, obviously the Jaguars made some improvements. They went out and got Christian Kirk. They, in my opinion, way overpaid him. Way overpaid him. But regardless, that's an upgrade. Mm-hmm. But I don't think they're really at a fully competitive level yet.
No.
You know, we'll see how Travis Etienne plays when he comes back. We'll see how James Robinson plays next year. There are a lot of questions surrounding the Jaguars, and they could be good, they could be not so good. It depends on who they bring in as a new coach. But then you look at the Texans. They traded Deshaun Watson away. Not really much else there.
Nope.
Then you look at the Titans. Titans had a good year last year. A lot of it stems from Derrick Henry. Mm-hmm. But how are the Titans going to play without A.J. Brown? So the division is up for grabs. And the Colts came close last year. But they need that extra piece. I mean, yes, Jonathan Taylor is a great running back. He far superseded everyone's expectations of what he was going to do last year. But beyond that, Michael Pittman is a solid wide receiver, but he's not a number one. Mo Alley-Cox is a decent tight end, but he's not a huge playmaker. But with Matt Ryan at the helm now, I think he's got something left in him. And you need to go out and get a number one wide receiver that Matt Ryan can throw the deep ball to. And we know that DK is big, and he is physical, and he will go up and grab the ball over any other cornerback in the entire league. And I don't know, which, as you just said, the AFC has so much firepower right now that if the Colts want any chance at competing in the playoffs, well, first of all, you got to make the playoffs.
Yeah.
And right now, the Colts roster is not going to make the playoffs. The offense is good, but it's not playoff level good. And even if you do make the playoffs, you're not going to make it far. Look at the other teams you're competing against. Even if you win the division and you make it out of there, even if you get a first-round bye, you could still be facing the Chargers or the Raiders or the Bengals in the second round.
Yeah.
So if you want any chance at being competitive in the playoffs and you want a chance at running for the Super Bowl, you got to go out and get that guy. And for me, DK Metcalf is that guy for Indianapolis.
Yeah, when I look at it, I think that your fit might be a better pick than mine when you talk about what it will add to a team, right? So you bring in a veteran presence in Matt Ryan. You have an MVP candidate in Taylor at running back. You have a defense that's ready to win now. But then, like, Michael Pittman is likely your number one wide receiver. Like, it just doesn't make sense. And if you look historically, when Matt Ryan has had success, he's not only had one big body, but he's had two big bodies, right? You look back to all those Falcon years with, who was it, Roddy White and Julio Jones?
Yeah.
On the outside. And And he will take some chances, but he's got to be able to trust the guys that he's taking chances with, and you can trust DK Metcalf in a one-on-one situation down the field. So
you can absolutely trust him. And if you have DK going deep and you don't like that option, then you still have Pittman and Cox as good check down options.
Yeah.
And I think that's the big difference is if you don't go out and get DK, then you're relying on Michael Pittman to be a number one wide receiver, which he just isn't. He's a solid player. He's a solid receiver. We know he can catch the ball, and his yards after catch numbers are decent. But he's not a number one the way DK Metcalf is. And that's just a fact. That's how the game goes. And as I said, if the Colts want to be able to put up the right kind of offensive numbers to match the way their defense is playing and compete in that division and with the rest of the AFC, to have a big guy like DK come in and catch passes from a veteran quarterback and a leader like Matt Ryan. He's not just a veteran quarterback. He is a leader on that field. And I think that kind of leadership will only make DK better.
Agreed. So do we got any fan questions before we close it out until tomorrow?
I don't see any questions. I just see a couple of points.
Yeah,
Eric says Panthers got their guy in corral. Colts D is good enough to get them in the playoffs and win the division. Titans look.
Okay.
Titans took a
Those are
big
some hot
step
takes.
back.
So here's the thing. What I will say is I'm going to look past your Matt Corral take only because like that's not immediate. That could be the case 2-3 years down the road. I just don't think it's immediate. What you said about the Colts. That division's Colts and Titans. I think either one could win the division. I think the Colts defense is good enough for them to win the division and get into the playoffs. What our concern is that roster good enough to be dangerous in the playoffs? And I don't think so. I think you shut down Jonathan Taylor, and that offense looks pretty stagnant and not so scary.
I agree.
Continue.
Yeah, that's all he had.
Oh, right.
But TikTok.
But good call-outs.
Yeah, TikTok's kind of quiet. I think Wrestling Maniac's still on. Flying High's been on. Shout out to you guys. If you're around tomorrow, we're going to do another hour. We're going to actually do a full hour.
Oh, yeah. That'll be
Today was just a teaser.
Yeah.
Just a teaser.
Yeah, we know that normally we do, the hour on Monday, but we're without our fearless leader today. So we decided to give a little something, give a couple of takes, and we'll dive back into the full hour tomorrow. Obviously, that typically includes covering 4 or 5 sports. Anybody who is paying attention to the UFC, there's a pay-per-view this weekend that's absolutely stacked, so we'll be covering that, covering a little baseball, some football, basketball. We may have to skip F1 this week, maybe just a little 3 to 5 minute segment on it, just because there's so much that happened with the draft and so much going on with the NBA playoffs that we don't want to necessarily give you guys a fresh sports 2 hour tomorrow. So we're going to try to stick it to as close to an hour as we can, and then you guys just send us suggestions, and we'll maybe put some other stuff out.
Cool, man. Well, it was a good job. Good job today. You guys killed it.
Guys, thanks for tuning in.
Yep, I'll get this episode up on Spotify, so if you guys are listening live, you'll be able to hear it.
Thank you for running the board.
Yeah, anytime. Anytime, guys. False here with Responsible Rob and Certified T, and that was your Fresh Sports Hour. Thanks, everybody. Make sure you tune in tomorrow for Trade Night. The Trade Night podcast will be live on Twitch, YouTube, and TikTok.